The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My question, Mr Speaker, is to the Prime Minister. I asked the Prime Minister, how can you justify your government's opposition to non-union competition on the waterfront in Fremantle that would deliver a 20% reduction in costs to the users, benefits that confirm the value of the Hilmer competition principles you have espoused? Will you condemn the strike action by the MUA, which is designed solely to maintain a union monopoly and frustrate Hilmer?
Order. Order. The Prime Minister.
I don't think the Prime Minister heard the last bit because the Leader of the House was continually interjecting and you didn't pull him up.
I thought you and he were having a friendly conversation.
No.
No, you weren't.
No,
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
We never have friendly conversations.
Oh, I just wondered.
Yeah. Well, I'll
the last part of the question, by all means.
No, I'll ask the question again.
No, the last part will do. We heard the first part.
Again.
The last part.
I asked the Prime Minister, how can you justify your government's opposition to non-union competition on the waterfront in Fremantle that would deliver a 20% reduction in cost to the users, benefits that confirm the value of the Hilmer competition principles you have espoused? Will you condemn strike action by the MUA, which is designed solely to maintain a union monopoly and frustrate the Hilmer process?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I should have thought that wherever you see national arrangements in Australia, whether it be under native title legislation, whether it be extending Hilmer competition principles, whether it be building on the labour relations and the now high productivity, low inflation culture of the country we have, you'll see no assistance from the Western Australian government. None. None whatsoever. Completely at odds with the general national tenor of economic development and of economic policy, and just at odds here on this occasion with, as the Minister for Finance said, a government lockout of employees on the waterfront in Western Australia. Now, Mr Speaker, the other thing is the contract was awarded apparently on a hometown basis to this particular contractor on the basis that he would follow the practice that he had demonstrated and made a name for himself in, that is, trying to lock away union participation in these activities, and was chosen on that basis accordingly. Mr Speaker, this is not about building on the huge lift in waterfront productivity which has taken place in the last 4 or 5 years. We've had from memory a 50% improvement in waterfront productivity. We have the same turnaround. We have the same turnaround times as they have in the major European.
Member for O'Connor's been warned. I'm not going to do it again.
In the major European ports, and as a consequence of that, Mr Speaker, we've also seen quite dramatic changes in the whole maritime industry, not just in stevedoring. Instead of building on that, continuing to change that, and taking the responsibility which the union has taken over the years by seeing its membership fall by less than half, what have we got as a cowboy effort by a cowboy government to lock out employees, to upset the industrial harmony? And this is exactly, Mr Speaker, the question implies what's wrong with that from the Leader of the Opposition. This is the sort of industrial relations policies he would be following. The sort of general peace, low levels of industrial activity, 2 to 3 percentage points of inflation after he left the nation in 11. Mr Speaker, this sort of change, a high productivity culture, a reduction in disputation of 2/3 over the period when he was last in office, he would return Australia to that for the sort of industrial relations policies he supports in the imputations of this question.
Member for the
So, Mr Speaker, you know, let the employers of this country understand that that under a coalition government, this is what they would see every day of the week. This is the sort of industrial disharmony they would see night and day across the industrial face of this country, and that as if, Mr Speaker, the profit share in the economy, now knowing no historic precedent, is not high enough, as if they want the wage share to go lower so that the profit share may go higher beyond any historic precedent, as if that is not enough. Mr Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition, one of the 2 or 3 things he championed in his whole political life is to hop into the wages of the low paid. To hop into the wages of people under about $30,000 a year. Mr Speaker, what a noble political objective that is, to say, well, there I was in Parliament for 25 years and I made sure I gave them an uppercut every chance I had, a body blow to the ordinary working people of this country. I mean, I can't understand, Mr Speaker, as a person who came from a small business environment, I can't understand why the Leader of the Opposition hates working people the way he does. I can't understand why he holds them in such contempt, why he wants to basically cut their wages and cut their benefits, while at the same time walking around talking piously about families, hypocritically about families,
member for Ballarat
when he's actually about ripping into them every chance he gets. So, Mr Speaker, it's a very important, quite an important little question, because while he has no policies and will not say what they are, what he does say is tell us what his prejudices are, and what his prejudicial position is. He'd like to support people who don't support unionists and don't support the lower paid and working people. That's about all we can get from him. So, Mr Speaker, he will go where the Western Australian government's going. Basically, down as the West Australian Premier pursues these policies, he continues to fall further and further in the polls. And just remember, Mr Speaker, we on this side of the House know there's a great big sort of political groper inside the Liberal Party about to snap shut on him, as his polling data reveals. As his polling data reveals where he is. I notice Mr Rocher and others amongst them here, Mr Filing, a few others, ready to spring a trap whenever the opportunity presents itself.
Order.